Hi there guys, Music Fan here. How you guys doing? Welcome, one and all, ladies and gentlemen. We have officially reached the end of my U2 discography review. A bit of a bittersweet moment for me that this discography review is going to end, but sweet also because today is not going to be just any other album review. Today we're going to go on not a one or two, but three-part album review of U2's long-awaited 13th studio album titled Songs of Innocence, released on the Apple event back this particular day, September 9th of 2014, last year. This is the 1 year anniversary to the day of this album release. We're going to celebrate it with a three-part video. First part will be the album review, second part will be the track review, and third will be a review, me personally, of the deluxe edition, the second CD of this particular physical copy of Songs of Innocence. So let's not waste any time. I want to get into this. So yeah, let's talk about this album, Songs of Innocence, U2's 5-year gap, almost nearly, I think about 5, maybe even 6-year gap. No, 5. That's more accurate. 5-year gap between studio albums. Possibly the longest gap since the other gap between Atomic Bomb and No Line on the Horizon, their last studio effort. Really, all of you guys know how this album first came out. I mean, I could make a whole other video discussing about that, and I will. But this album was first released, unexpectedly to the public, during U2's appearance at the Apple convention of Apple products. That's this on to the day of this particular day, September 9th, and U2 unexpectedly made an appearance performing the track "Miracle of Joy" Ramone, and then Bono and the band announcing that they will release a digital copy of this album for free to millions of iTunes accounts, iTunes customers, iTunes users, millions upon millions of customers all over the world, myself included. Of course, I have my own personal thoughts that I would like that I have. Again, I will share those in another video sometime soon. But right now, let's focus on this album, because when this album came out, it was unexpected, both in the greatest of ways and yet in the most intensely despising of ways. But of course, again, as I've said before, I would make this into another video, and I will. But really, talking about the Apple event would just only take away from talking about this album's music, because months after that particular release caused a atomic nuclear firestorm of discussions, of talks, of the value of music, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then people started to really gravitate towards this album. They started to kind of dissect of, well, what's the whole big deal of this whole Apple free album controversy that has ignited the press and ignited the public, and possibly in the first time in a while, really. And then people started to dissect and see what this album really is, and that's what we're going to talk about now. So really, Songs of Innocence, I mean, with the last album, No Line on the Horizon, U2 was being a little more experimental. They were being a little more risky with their song structures, with their experimentation, with their arrangements. They didn't try to repeat what they did with Achtung Baby, Europa, and Pop, unbeknownst to me of what everyone else was expecting. And that album, even though it was successful, at least selling up to 3 million copies, again, an incredible feat for the year 2009 when you think about it, it still met mixed reviews. It still met a very puzzled reception in the general public of taking this as a very overt experimental album. And even though the band's 360 tour with the innovative claw structure, filling in stadiums all over the world, and being one of the most successful tours of the last 4 years, possibly, even though that was a ginormous success, really U2's future came into serious question and to serious doubt in the public eye, and even U2 themselves. Like, Bono was at this point was even talking about, is the band even relevant anymore? Why would anyone need another U2 album when there's 12 other albums that are out there right now? Maybe we should just throw it in the locker and say, bye bye world, you don't need us, you don't need U2 to entertain you, or you don't need U2, or you don't, or to annoy the heck out of you anyway. So okay, bye, whatever, this review is over, goodbye. I'm just joking, I'm kidding. But seriously, this album really put U2 in a huge creative bind. They had started to work with various producers, from Red One to, I think, even David Guetta, I think, who made a lot of electronic pop hits. And finally they end up with Brian Burton, aka Danger Mouse. Of course, he's famous for producing Gnarls Barkley, he's famous for producing the Gorillaz, amongst others in his very impressive resume. And so he agrees to work with U2 on this particular album, and so they work to the bone for 5 years between No Line and the eventual surprise release of this album. And really, after this album, once the whole controversy of the Apple release finally died down, or at least not died down, but at least cooled a little bit, and people started to look at the music of this album, they started to find that, you know what, this album, some say this album was the worst U2 album ever. Some people say that this album sucks, that this album is terrible, this album wasn't worth the hype of the Apple controversy. But for me, no, I wouldn't necessarily put this album amongst the classic pantheon of albums such as Achtung Baby and Joshua Tree. But that being said, immediately after this album downloaded itself into my playlist and I started to listen to it, I have to say that this album is possibly U2's best ever cohesive body of work since All That You Can't Leave Behind. This album doesn't rank amongst the classics, but it does rank among their best, in my personal opinion. Once I started to hear all the tracks off this album, I really started to get the impression that the band, for the first time in their entire career, looked back. I mean, sure, with Atomic Bomb, they looked back, musically speaking, into a musical past to kind of try and reinvigorate themselves. But this time around, they really look back. Instead, rather than take us on another detour journey adventure with No Line on the Horizon, or at least another album like it, instead, this is U2, Bono, Larry, Adam, and The Edge taking us to a place that we have never really visited before. Dublin, Ireland, their past, their teenage adolescent years. We have them visiting the experiences that had formed and shaped these four Irish men into the people that they are today. People who seen violence occur in their native homeland of Ireland, who've seen personal tragedies, personal loss. Four men who've seen friendships united, friendships formed. Four men who've seen what happens when corruption and personal greed clouds the mind and clouds your judgments, and clouds your sense of humanity, and really events that have shaped these four men in a way that is never before. And now intimacy is something that's not relatively new to U2. They've been intimate in the past with the past few studio albums. You had intimate moments from the earlier post-punk albums. Boy, October War. You had intimate moments with Unforgettable Fire. Even Achtung Baby, which a lot of people say is their most intimate album, rightfully so. But what makes this album unique, in my opinion, is that this is the first time that U2 really opened themselves up to us. This is the first time that U2 ever had the courage, musically and lyrically, or more importantly lyrically, to really take us on a journey into their past and to take us a journey into their adolescence, into seeing what were the events personally and politically and socially that shaped the band members. I mean, of course, you had two songs dedicated to two fantastic heroes, Joey Ramone, the late Joey Ramone, of the influential punk band The Ramones, and also Joe Strummer of The Clash. Really, two of these songs, The Miracle of Joey Ramone and This Is Where You Can Reach Me Now, paying tribute to them respectively. The really unique thing about this album, at least for me, is that this album, for the first time in U2's history, possibly even since War, if I could even make the argument, that this album really rocks. This album is a full-fledged, well, for the most part, a fledged rock album, but this is still an album that returns to U2's post-punk roots. Now, you're not going to hear anything similar to the visceralness you hear off of the War album. Even though it's not as visceral or not as punk-ish as that particular album in particular, still, for men in their 50s to record an album this energetic and this fiery is great. It's fantastic to hear all of these particular songs. Miracle of Joey Ramone, which really starts things off with such a glam rock-esque way, with the way that riff goes, like dang, 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 that fantastic, great, fantastic rock song. It's just simply rocks, and that's the most important thing of U2's aspect, at least for me anyway, is that it rocks. It's pure rock and roll music, and now not rock and roll in the sense of B.B. King rock and roll or Elvis Presley rock and roll, nor is this song in particular a punk rock album. This is a punk rock-esque song, really, that really starts things off in a very energetic way. You have tracks like that, as well as tracks like Volcano, which really is the sound of a volcano exploding. You hear Adam Clayton's bass playing, and it sounds like molten lava breaking through the rocks, and the molten rocks just boiling over and until exploding into a gigantic musical euphoria of amazingness. I mean, and yeah, Volcano is a fantastic song, I really have to say. Also tracks like Raised by Wolves, which really lyrically is just a fantastic song. I really love Raised by Wolves, lyrically speaking, that it's just a fantastic song. The imagery that takes its inspiration from the tragic bombing of I think it was Omaha, I think, of the Dublin, Ireland bombings in, I think it was either June 2nd to 7th of 76. I'll add an annotation just to add correction to that, but really takes possibly one of the darkest days of Dublin, Ireland, and U2 takes that and really replaces the sense of loss, suffering, and fear at the hands of stupid terrorists into an act of pacifist defiance, of Raised by Wolves, we're stronger than fear. If we open our eyes, you disappear. It's like the fear of terrorism will not scare us. We will fight them with our music. We will fight them with our hearts. And in many cases, we will defeat them as a result of it. Raised by Wolves is a fantastic track. When I say that this album is U2 at their most... Now, it's not as visceral or as intimately, visceral as Achtung Baby in this instance, but that being said, this album is also U2 at their most intimate in the sense of real, true intimacy into their very, very characters and their persons. What defined them growing up in Dublin, Ireland as teenagers. And really, I think of tracks like Cedarwood Road that has that awesome, beautiful riff from The Edge, really just add like fantastic riff, just a phenomenal, fantastic guitar riff, just awesome. Definitely when I heard this song live, like, it was amazing. Cedarwood Road in this instance really takes us back to the band's upbringings, like that cherry blossom tree, being a very rich form of luxury, at least in the time of Dublin, Ireland in the 70s. around that particular time. Songs like Song for Someone, which really emphasizes awkward first love, and really is a song about Alison Stewart, otherwise Allie Houston, Bono's wife. Also speaks of Iris Hold Me Close, which in comparison to Sometimes You Can't Make It on Your Own, which was the tribute to Bono's father, this track, Iris Hold Me Close, is of course attributed to Iris. Now this is special because all throughout U2's career we've had references to Bono's mother, from Tomorrow to Mofo, to Lemon from Zeropa. We've seen her time and time again before, but this is the first time we get a track being, maybe not specifically, but at least being about her. Bono has never written an entire song overtly dedicated to her before, and this is the first glimpse that we get of Bono singing about his late mother. And again, I will mention this in the track by track review. But definitely, this is what I mean when it says intimacy. Rather, the band really opens themselves up to us, gives us almost access to their internal experiences, and them kind of returning back to that past to see why are they who they are, like what created the four members of U2, their personalities, their ambitions. Songs like California, There Is No End to Love, recounts the band's first trip to Los Angeles in the late 70s, early 80s as teenagers, and just being so enamored by the ecstaticness of that state. And opening of this track is unique because it's almost like a Beach Boys-esque harmony in the beginning, which I thought was simply amazing. This track is pure pop, good pop, perfection. Straight, every note here is just euphoric bliss. The first time I heard this track, after it was downloaded to my playlist, I couldn't stop listening to it. I kept listening to it over and over and over and over again. I still listen to this to this day. It's an amazing song. It's definitely Danger Mouse all over the production of this song, but yet the rock sense of U2 still also dominates this song. Plus, Edge's guitar solo, great, freaking phenomenal. This is where You Can Reach Me Now. I have to say, I like this track. I really do. This sounds very Rock the Casbah-esque sounding. This track really reminds me of this. Of course, Adam Clayton's bass playing is super prominent on this song. His bass playing saves this song for me, as well as Edge's guitar work. But I have to say that this is possibly my least favorite track of this album. I like it for the reasons I just stated, but there's just something about this track. Maybe it's the whole riding a car through the desert vibe I get from this particular song. But I like it, I definitely do, but it's a track that I kind of feel it works, but just not 100% for me. I really wish that the band would have added a little something extra. Maybe they changed the melody in here somewhere. I take this song for what it is, but it still doesn't shake the fact that I have a problem or two with this song. This is my least favorite track off this album. If you love this song, great, fantastic for you, awesome. But for me, my least favorite track off this album. Sleep Like a Baby Tonight is also worth mentioning because it's not U2 at their most darkest, because they've had darker tracks before this one. Again, look to the 90s catalog. But this is possibly the first time U2 has ever gotten not just only dark, but simply ominous, sinister, haunting. For the first time in almost a decade, more than a decade actually, a decade and 5 years, maybe 4 years, decade and 4 years, that U2 has ever gotten this ominous and this dark. It sounds something that's come out from Zeropa, from that sessions, except it's coming onto this particular disc. Edge's guitar solo reminds me of a guitar solo that maybe Omar Rodriguez Lopez from the Mars Volta or Anti-Mask would probably have made, again, in my opinion. Um, but really, Sleep Like a Baby Tonight, I don't want to say that this is my second least favorite song because I like this song a little more than This Is Where You Can't Reach Me Now. Bono, the other unique thing is that Bono does this, I can't recite it, but it's a really high-pitched falsetto. High-pitched falsetto, Lemon-esque falsetto. How long has Bono have not sung this particular vocal range in, I don't know, 10, 15 years, maybe 20 years? Since Europa, I can't do the math right now, but anyway, it's unique because Bono has that still has that falsetto in him, and it's fantastic. Musically, it's fantastic. Lyrically, again, that's for the track review. But The Troubles really ends things off in a very dark, no, not dark, but in a very hopefully optimistic way, oddly enough. And it features a collaboration with Leaky Lee in collaboration with this particular track. And it's haunting sounding, but it's not to the point of unlistenable. The first time I heard this song, I thought, what's going on? But after time and time again, this track has spoken to me, and I really love this track now. And it's one of their best closers to an album ever. At first I was puzzled by it, but now I like it. Really, this whole album is clearly one of U2's best. It certainly doesn't rank among their classics, but it ranks among their best. I'd compare this album with All You Can Leave Behind, with Unforgettable Fire, with really all their not their classic albums, but certainly their best albums. I mean, this album is possibly U2's best album in about like a decade and 4 years, really. I mean, I'd rank this album like a 4.9 out of 5. Really, the only stickler points here for me would be This Is Where You Can Reach Me Now, speaking of which, like, the only reason why it's a point below 5 for me is that and this is just a bit of a nitpick of mine, but really, like, recall when I was saying in the How to Dismantle Atomic Bomb review that I wished that the tracks off that particular album would have been a little bit more risky, would have been a little bit more, not punk, but punk-esque, would have been a little bit more of a harsher grit to him. This album is the reverse of that, like where most of these tracks really have a punk rock edge to them, even though not necessarily punk, but they still have a much harder, grittier rock edge to them in particular. Again, no pun intended. But now this kind of suffers, at least for me, the opposite of what Atomic Bomb did. For me, this album is rocking. This album does take a little bit more of a risk. This album the songs off this album sound a little more dirtier. But the thing that it's missing from this isn't so much harmony, but it's a little bit more of a rock production. Now, I know it sounds crazy when I say it, but let me explain. Listen to a track from Atomic Bomb called All Because of You. That track in particular, when Edge's guitar comes in with that particular song, it comes off with this really heavy, awesome guitar tone that Edge brings into this particular track. Honestly, I really wished this album, at least Edge's guitar at least, would have shined more through like that. Like, have all these songs have a All Because of You-ish guitar tone. At least the more rockier songs, not the softer songs like, not songs like Song for Someone or This Is Where You Can Reach Me Now. And Iris Hold Me Close, not the softer songs, but at least the songs that have a little bit more intensity to them, like This Is Where You Can Reach Me Now, like Volcano, like Miracle of Joy. Well, Miracle of Joy Ramone has that, but not of the other songs have that. I also wished that tracks off of the deluxe edition of this album would have made it onto this one. I think even though I like Sleep Like a Baby Tonight, I certainly would swap this song with a track from the deluxe edition, Lucifer's Hands. I would switch that song and put that track in there in its place, because that song, phenomenal. But as for what this album is, I still take it for what it is. It's definitely a much more energetic album than No Line on the Horizon. Not that No Line on the Horizon wasn't energetic. It's just energetic in different ways and less obviously than what people expect. Really, guys, despite all the troubles, despite all the controversy surrounding the Apple release, I would still give this album a 4.9 out of 5. Really, nothing is really detracted from me much, apart from my small little gripes, my small little nitpicks from this album. This is where you can reach me now, even though I still like that song. Sleep Like a Baby Tonight, even though I like that song. Apart from, it's not a perfect album, but it is still some of U2's best ever songs. This album is still U2's, at least for me, U2's best ever cohesive, intimate album to have come out in years. And that's saying something, like considering that the last few albums, well, Atomic Bomb did reach commercial success, but really this is an album that has really become playable. This album has intimacy, it has rock, it has intensity behind each and every track. And even the tracks that I don't necessarily like, of course I mentioned them before, they still have a quality that I can admire, even though I don't have to necessarily like it, but I still admire. And really, this is possibly U2's best ever album in a decade and 4 years. Really, this album is just so fantastic. This album is just such a great album. U2 definitely returns, makes a big comeback with this particular album, at least for me. And yeah, I would give this album a 4.9 out of 5. Not U2's most perfect album, but it's the closest that they have ever gotten to perfect in a while. And that definitely says a lot more than bands who just continuously gets hits on the mark over and over and over again, or bands that just suck all the way through. Those are my thoughts of this review of this particular album, Songs of Innocence. I've been wanting to do this for a while, and I'm really glad I got the opportunity to do so right now. And yeah, guys, comments below. Tell me your comments below right now. Tell me, what are your thoughts? I've already told you my thoughts of this album. What are your thoughts? Do you think this is U2's best ever album ever? Or do you think U2 just lost it? That whatever U2 tries from an like Apple stunt, free album release stunt, despite that nothing they ever released will ever work for you. Seriously, leave your comments below. Do you think this is a great album, or just think it's a bad album? Tell me why. And really, this marks the end of the U2 discography review, but there are 2 more videos coming up in this special 3-part review of Songs of Innocence. So coming up, there's a track-by-track review, so don't go anywhere, guys. Stay right there, and I will see you guys next time. U2, Songs of Innocence, 4.9 out of 5. Fantastic album, and that's my thoughts. See you guys next time. Take care. Thank you so much, and I'll see you guys next time. Later.